Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here. And I want to thank Nama for creating this opportunity to bring innovators, entrepreneurs, social entrepreneurs, policymakers, corporates together so we can really collaborate on solving some of the complex challenges that we face today in the world. And we face several challenges. I really believe that investing in women is the smartest economic venture of today. If we look at some of the good news, well, world female income is twice greater than combined GDP of China and India. Women are the next growth economy. Women's assets and wealth controlled is $20 trillion and increasing. Globally, women control spend over 80% in most countries and influence these decisions. There is, in fact, data by Nike Foundation that shows for every dollar that a woman earns, she invests 90 cents in education, nutrition, and healthcare. So when women grow, families prosper and communities move forward. Clearly, there's a business case for investing in women. GDP and global and gender parity are directly correlated. So the business case is there. We also know that diversity boosts the bottom line. Scott Page has done extensive research using econometrics and found a direct correlation between diverse teams and greater innovation. So if there's a room of high IQ people and then another room with medium level IQ but a diverse group, guess where does innovation happen? In the diverse group. And that's where sustainable solutions are developed. So we know that women boost the bottom line. McKinsey has calculated global gender parity would add $28 trillion to the economy by 2025. That's greater than the GDP of US and China combined. They're great gains for each country. However, in spite of all this data that we have, we know we are not making sufficient progress, and the speed is very slow. We do not have enough women in leadership roles. This is true for Pakistan. This is true for Indonesia. This is true for countries in Africa. And it's true for the developed world also, which includes the US and UK. In fact, the World Economic Forum, where leaders gather every year, and it produces a report on gender parity, calculated in 2015 that it would take 140 years for global gender parity. In 2016, it went up to 170 years. And the latest report is out for 2017. What do you think, colleagues? Do you think that the number is improving? Are we going to now take less time to achieve global gender parity? How many in this room think that the figure has actually improved for 2017? Please raise your hand. No one's optimistic in this room. One person. Great. You give us some hope. What about people who think that it's going to be the same, 170 years again? Okay, a few people. And who clearly everyone else thinks it's going to be worse. And you're right. It's actually gone up to 200 years. So, however, let me tell you this, that I am optimistic. We live in times of increased disruption, innovation, technology, social media, millennials who think differently, who want different things, and I believe this is a time of immense opportunity. Melinda Gates says when we invest in women and girls, we are investing in people who invest in everyone. Her Highness also believes strongly on women's empowerment and women's inclusion in the economy. I want to share with you why this matters to me and why am I here with you. I grew up in a military family in Pakistan. My dad wanted to be a journalist but didn't have enough money because he moved from India when partition happened. He had lost his parents and grew up with his cousins. So he dropped out of FC college where he was wanting to study journalism and joined the military like his cousins. He did well. When he retired, he went into human rights. I grew up going to military schools, going to government schools, and my first private school was in 7th grade. My best friend was then going for college to the US, and I got influenced by her. We get influenced by our best friends. And I told my family, I also want to go to the US. My dad said I was too young and I should consider going for my master's. America was very far away, very different from us, and the values were very different. So it took me a year to convince my dad. And then he told me if I got a scholarship, I could go. Mount Holyoke, which is a liberal arts college for women, gave me a scholarship, and I ended up there. I, like a good Pakistani, studied economics and business studies, which is what most of us do. And on the side, however, the liberal arts education allowed me to study art history, philosophy, religion, and I developed the love of learning. Around this time, my brother was ready for college. And I saw my family encouraging him to apply and to go abroad. And I thought, hey, this is very interesting. This was the first time that I experienced in my own family, which I considered very progressive and forward-looking, the messages that we receive as young women and as young men on our ambitions and our dreams. So I came back. I started working for the World Bank as a consultant. Everyone was duly impressed. It sounded really good. And I went out in communities and I saw what these big projects were doing. And unfortunately, in my country, in Pakistan, I saw very little impact. And I was very disappointed. But it took me to places in frontier, in Balochistan, in slums, that even though I didn't have a privileged life, but I had not seen poverty firsthand. And I was amazed to see the struggles of my countrymen and women. And I was thrilled to see their aspirations. Everyone wanted to educate their children. But the quality of education was very poor. So I quit. My boss, who later became the governor of State Bank, was an economist, advised me to go and meet an entity. I met them. I loved the idea of giving microloans to women, and I became one of the founders. I was the 7th team member. We would go out in communities talking about financial services for women. I thought as a young woman, we'd have hundreds and thousands of women coming to us and saying, I want to take a financial loan from you, because there was no security, no collateral. But guess what? Do you think we had hundreds of women coming to us? No. Why do you think so? Please go ahead. Sorry?
Sorry. Based on my own experience of working with women entrepreneurs in South Africa, it's not an easy thing to do because, one, even though the loans, like in that particular case, are readily available, but the thought of not having a plan on what you're going to do and the pressure that comes with it and so on
Yes.
is just discourages people from being able
Yeah,
to take a loan.
so what was amazing was that I found these women who were running grocery stores, who were making shoes, who were making bangles, but they didn't really see themselves as small business owners, and they underestimated their own value. So we had to start by just building confidence and building trust in the women. Slowly, they started coming forward. When we started, there were three myths or barriers that we faced. People said to us, this is not going to work. You're going to give financial services to women, they'll never get permission from their husbands. They won't be supported. Second, you'll never find women loan officers. Who wants their daughters to go out in slums and rural communities? Parents want their daughters to stay either in offices or in their homes. Thirdly, you think your money is going to come back on time? You're mistaken. Pakistanis, they're a hard nut to crack. Your money is not going to come back. Well, let me share with you, over a decade, we grew from those 2 rooms to 140 branch offices, from 7 team members to 2,000, 40% were women, and we dispersed $200 million. And guess what? 98% of it came back on time. And the credit really goes to the Pakistani women. The women at the bottom of the pyramid who demonstrated they were resilient, creative, responsible, resourceful. This was not charity. This was not subsidy. This experience really taught me about investing in women, because when we invest in women, we invest in families and communities. Fast track, I went to the Kennedy School. I ended up getting another scholarship. I was very blessed. The Harvard Kennedy School is an uplifting environment. It instills in you the passion that you can make a difference. And it encourages you to go back in the world and to tackle big, complex challenges and to find solutions for it, both in your own country and for globally. So I started working on women's economic inclusion and founded Circle, with the belief that investing in women is the smartest economic venture of today. I'm sure all of you are familiar with the challenges that women face. We know women lack access to networks and sponsors. We know women lack visibility. They keep their head down, work hard, think their work will shine. They don't have access to as many assignments that will increase their visibility in front of senior managers. We also know that lack of reliable, affordable health care is a major problem. It's a big concern in my country. And family structures are breaking down. Families no longer live together, so it's very hard. And harassment is rampant in many cultures, in many societies. In fact, we've had the whole Me Too campaign, which has highlighted this. And then mobility. Let me share with you my own story that when I started my career, my mother would pick and drop me. In Pakistan, that is what happens if you have a car. If you don't have a car, you use public transport. So my work hours, of course, as an analyst were erratic. I was working 6:37, my mom's waiting for me, and I was like, this is ridiculous. I can't have my mother waiting for me. So let me see what are my options. I started taking the tuk-tuk, the rickshaw. It took 40% of my salary in the first month. So I decided, let me look for other alternatives. My other alternative was the mini wagon, where as a woman, I get 2 seats in front with the driver. The rest are men packed in the back. I had to wait longer. The same journey that took me 30 minutes was now taking me an hour. And my last 15 minutes, I walked home in a nice neighborhood. And that's where I realized as a woman how hard walking can be on the streets and the challenge of just being out in public spaces. The sad part is that that continues today, and millions of women all over the world face these issues just getting to work. So what can we do about it? What are some of the lessons? Let me start with something very small. What are the pictures surrounding us? It's important that we have women as role models. This is based on research done by Iris Bunet at the Harvard Kennedy School, who runs the Women in Public Policy program, and showcases that it makes a huge difference if we have pictures that shows diverse people in leadership. It inspires young women that we too can be like this. The conferences, do we see women over there? Are their voices represented? In my country, there are often conferences that start with 8 individuals sitting on this huge panel, and guess what? They're all men, and they're all above 60. That does not represent today's world. Pakistan has 60% of its population under the age of 30, and they're missing. Their voices are missing, their ideas are missing, their creativity is missing. We're not tapping in that resource. And that happens to be true for many other conferences. So we started a campaign in Pakistan, which started by saying, where are the women? And we then realized that there's a global campaign called Manels, when there is a panel full of men only. So we started this campaign as a pledge. We have 1,000+ pledges. Several CEOs have taken the pledge. The idea is if you get invited to a panel, ask who else is on the panel. And if it's only men, suggest names of women. We know that diversity leads to more interesting conversations, new perspectives, new ideas, solutions. It also attracts a diverse audience, and it creates role models. So this is something we're still working on, and unfortunately, we still continue to see conferences which are dominated by only male speakers. But it's slowly shifting. Social media is leading to huge debates and conversations. There was just one happening in my country yesterday. So what are some of the game changers? How do we make progress on this? How do we move the needle? Well, one thing which doesn't surprise anyone, you need commitment from the top. It will only happen if the leadership really believes in this. So we need commitment from the top. We need holistic program. There's no one magic wand. We will not wake up one day and find that these problems are done and solved. So we need long-term approaches. We need experimentation. We need holistic programs. We need investment in mentorship and sponsorship. Women do not get sponsored as much as men. We need to change that. And those sitting in this room can. Are you mentoring and sponsoring women in your teams? A simple question you could ask yourself and make a commitment for it today. Are you giving access to challenging opportunities, new assignments to the women in your team? Or are you just going to the usual people? How are we giving new opportunities? Do we have policies for harassment and are we taking it seriously? And then metrics, management 101. What gets measured gets done. So we need to have benchmarks and targets for this. I'm delighted to share with you that Nama and Circle are collaborating to launch Irtika, Elevate, where our idea is to mobilize CEOs in the region, in the MENA region starting, but we want to take it beyond that, and really bring CEOs together to commit to gender diversity. And what does that really mean? Well, we're making it very simple and concrete. What it means is increase women's employment in your company. Work towards bringing women in leadership and boards. Look at your procurement policies. Is it including women? Yesterday, UN Women had shared with us how less than 1% of companies have businesses coming from women suppliers. Why is that the case? Can we change that? Can you make a commitment for it and lobby for it? Mentor 2 to 3 women. Are you willing to give 3 to 5 hours a year and mentor women and do that consciously? We want CEOs to commit to that. And lastly, bring your voice to this issue. Help us amplify this and join us on social media and give your voice so we can make collective action. I am very pleased to share with you that in Pakistan, we have 7 CEOs who have joined us for Elevate. And in fact, on December 14th, we have a gathering with over 30 CEOs to share Irtika, Elevate with them and get commitments. So who are some of the CEOs who have joined us? It includes Unilever, Mitsubishi, Nestle, UBL, which is one of the largest banks and is now headed by a woman, the first Pakistani woman to lead a large commercial bank in Pakistan, Standard Chartered, National Food, Reckitt. The idea is that these 7 CEOs will then inspire many other companies, and we want SMEs to join us also to really make a conscious effort on growing women leaders and bringing them in. What is the value proposition? Why should you be doing this? I think the answers are obvious. However, the idea is that you get recognized as a leading organization that believes in women's inclusion, that is championing this effort. Create a brand of being an equal employer. Leverage diverse talent. If 50% of our population is women and we don't have them included, in Pakistan, do you know, in the formal economy, it's less than 25% women who are part of the formal economy. It's one of the lowest in the region. And our country is ranked bottom on the gender index. So we're next to Yemen. And that's why I'm even more delighted that we're starting this from Pakistan, a country which has huge potential and promise. So what are some of the next steps? If this is something that resonates with you, if you want a better future for your daughters and for your grandchildren, join us. Join Irtika, join Elevate, join Circle and Namawomen to bring your voice. Together we can make this change. We will be sharing the guidelines. We will collect baseline data because metrics matter, and we will be mapping that annually. In the next 2 years, when we gather here again for the conference with Nama, we would like the companies to present their information. This will also become a platform for us to share best practices, to share local data, as well as to really mobilize technical assistance on this issue and amplify and build the right system. Here you can see some of our CEOs and entrepreneurs who have been supporting women in Pakistan. When women grow, nations progress. Here we see Shazia Saeed, who's the Unilever CEO, who has been joining us over here. And lastly, I'd just like to say that when women grow, families prosper. And we know that this is society, this will be more important. If not now, then when? If not us, if not now, then when? If not us, then who? We are the ones we've been waiting for. Thank you. I'd love to take if there are any questions, comments. How do you think we can do this better? because the idea is to really work together and collaborate. Yes. Can we have a?
Um, do you have to be from a specific country to be able to join these platforms, or can anyone join?
You can be in different countries. In fact, yesterday I met women from Latvia, and they said this is so exciting, and we'd love to join in. So we'd be happy to welcome, from any place, because this is an issue that impacts all of us, and I think this is how we can cause disruption at a massive level.
Thank you.
What are your thoughts? I'd love to hear what do people think. Are you inspired? Are you concerned? Do you have suggestions?
Hi. Hello.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Nadia. I'm from the construction sector. Recently moved over here, and I've joined my father's company. I just found out of the summit yesterday, and what I've been thinking about for the last year that I've been here, how there are very, very few women in the construction sector, and how I have over 200 laborers, and they're all men. And there's so many other countries. In Malaysia, you've seen in Cambodia, where they have really been promoting women, not just as engineers, not just desk jobs, but actually on sites and physically working. I'm just wondering, how practical would it be to implement something over here, because of culturally speaking as well, and as well as I'd sent an email to the Ministry of Labor inquiring about could I hire female workers over here, and even if you go through the logistics, would it be possible to do that?
So of course, I'm not an expert in the logistics business, and I'm sure there'll be people here who can help you later on, because there was just a session earlier on, bringing women into supply chains. But what I'll share with you is Shazia Saeed, who's the Unilever CEO in Pakistan. She said to me that whenever they create a position for women, which is unusual, where women are not dominant, we make sure that we set them up for success. And I think that's the message I'd give you, that yes, this is a challenging sector, it's not easy, and that's why it's important to engage with different people and find out what are the right solutions, but also to be really behind those women who you're going to put into those positions to make sure that they succeed, because there's a lot at stake. But I think this can be done, why not? But you have to think about it, logically, and you have to think what is the right time for it, how do you sequence it, what are some of the things that will be done for women, for resources for them, for the men, to get them to adopt it. So many different things like that, yes.
Hi, I'm Aisha, and I represent a platform called Livewire. My question is, when you have these conversations, is it in the capacity of businessmen, businesswomen, or is it focused on as family members? Because you mentioned your personal story, where there was differential treatment. That is where I think it really starts. So do you try to nip it in the bud, or do you let it continue, grow to a point where we have to address it at such a platform?
So there's a research that shows that CEOs who have daughters are in fact have more empathy towards this issue. It's very interesting. So life experiences do shape us. So it depends where we want to start the conversation. We are, for example, starting a coding project, teaching young women from underserved communities coding and programming skills. And over there, we engage with their families also, so that we may get their buy-in. And I think in Pakistan's context, getting women in the economy means that you have to engage with the families. So it really depends on the context that you're working with, but I think family support is critical. We've all seen that the messages really start very young. I know that in my own family, I have seen my extended family, there were two kids running. One is a little boy and the other is a little girl. They're running fast. They both fall. And everyone says, to the little girl, oh, I told you not to run fast. You should be careful. And the boy is just like, oh, go ahead, run. It's okay. So the messages that the girls are getting very early on is you've got to be careful. It's not easy. Don't think too big. Look after the needs of other people. So it's very interesting. If you look at even Disney, You know, you'd be amazed. I read this research on Disney and I realized that even when Disney has characters that are women, they get 1/3 the time as men. It's fascinating. You know, I'm sure it's not conscious, it's just happening. But it's fascinating. Women over 40 in Hollywood don't get as much time as men over 40 on the screen. So the good news is that this data is coming out. People are talking about these things. So that's what's fascinating me, because I feel this is not a conversation on the fringes anymore. It is coming in the mainstream. And more of us need to bring our voice to it. When we go to events, when we go to conferences, when we don't see women out there, or we go to companies, or you get invited to speak at a company, bring out these issues. I think if we really make this a part of our daily life, that's how we're going to make change happen. It can't be a tick box that I do something when I go to a conference, or it's a speaking engagement. It's something you live and breathe every day. And I'll tell you, microfinance, when I was doing it, and as I shared with you, I did it for a decade, and we took it from 2 rooms to 300,000 women. I mean, I was not an expert in scaling an organization, growing it, but I really believed in it, and I was passionate about it, and I really lived, breathed, dreamt microfinance. It was like my baby. So I think, all of us have to and can play an important role in creating an equitable world, a world where both men and women can thrive. And that's what we're looking for. Business can thrive, and men and women can thrive, and families can be stronger.
I had a question. So I'm Michelle. I run a media company for women, by women, right? We're empowering everyday women to share their stories, their personal narratives. I'd love to work with you and to bring Pakistani women and have their stories on our platform, because we've been seeing a very interesting shift in the audiences from Southeast Asian countries, especially in the Middle East as well. And I think what you're doing is amazing. And I think so I have a tech background. I was one of 2 girls from my whole class who graduated from computing security in my year. Every time I'd go for an interview, for an internship, they'd say, "Are you sure you don't want a marketing role?" And that was very, I was in my freshman year and my sophomore year, it was very hard to kind of deal with that, especially when you're younger. So I think, how can we also tackle girls that are studying in universities and to encourage them and show them, you know what, like, you can do it regardless of what your background is, regardless of whatever challenges you're facing. I think one way is to bring forward their stories by encouraging them to write, not speaking for them, but letting them speak, right? So I just wanted to hear your thoughts around that too.
I think that's and we'd love to collaborate and bring these stories. So let me tell you, I live in Karachi, which is probably the 5th largest city in the world. We have 25 million people, and it's a city within cities. Like, it's huge. Like, from one place to another can take you 2.5 hours. And we have some great universities. And I came to Karachi 2.5 years ago. I'm originally from Lahore. So I started going to these universities to talk, and I was amazed to discover that in universities where we have a high number of women being educated, like other countries, but the transition from university to workforce is extremely low. So engineering university, one of the top in the country, NED, 50% women engineers, but guess what? Less than 20% are joining the workforce. A women's university in the heart of Karachi, 2,000 women, less than 10% women are joining the workforce. It's shocking. So yes, we need role models. We need role models for these women, and we need them to hear stories so they can be inspired and they can think big. And we also need to engage with the families in this case. That's very critical. And then there are questions of mobility and safety and security, where governments and policymakers can make a huge role. We have Careem now in Pakistan and Uber, and that's made a huge difference. Careem has 70% women as their passengers. However, not everyone can afford a Careem. So that's the next challenge. But it's made a huge difference for women to feel safe. And another change is the drivers are communicating with women. They never had a chance. We're a pretty segregated society, economic levels. If you're from a more educated background, there's no issue. But in lower education, economics, there's not much interaction. So that's changing. So that's why I'm very hopeful. And Pakistanis are big on Facebook. That offers a lot of opportunity. I think digital literacy is critical for young women and for older women also. So we need to leverage all of this, and we need to think a little bit differently, and we need partnerships. Doing it alone is difficult, challenging, risky. We need different partners. Yes, Sabine.
Hi, Sadaffe. My name is Sabine. One thing that, talking about Pakistan is the lack of role models. And we have a few women in senior positions, but they lack confidence. How can we, again, mentor them, or what do we need to do for them to see that they can be great role models as well?
So, I ran leadership programs in UAE also, and there was a Pepsi HR head in the program. And she said to me, I have so many capable women sitting in our office, and what I notice is they're not applying for promotions. And men, they come on my door and they're like, where's my career going? What's next? And Sheryl Sandberg talks about that also. Women look at a criteria, they say, I'm good at only 2, I've got to get better, work hard, then I'll apply. Man looks at the same thing, says, I'm good at 2 out of 5, I'm going to go for it. Great attitude. So I think, yes, there are some things that as women we can do differently. One of the big things that I feel we can do differently is women supporting other women. We don't have enough of that. In fact, what I find is that a lot of women who are in senior positions shy away from this. And they don't want to be associated with the women's agenda. But really, it's not just the women's agenda. It's really good for business. It's good for society. So I think that's another thing we need to do differently. More women supporting other women visibly and celebrating their success and having a growth and an abundance mindset. Because women one woman succeeds, more women succeed. There's space for all of us. And I think women who are in leadership positions need to increase their own visibility. Yes, not many women leaders come to conferences and events. Many of them are actually not amazing forums to be part of. I mean, they're very repetitive and boring. But I think you do need to go to a few consciously, because you're creating role models. You're increasing visibility. And then I think even women don't tend to ask. I mean, Sheryl Sandberg talks about it in her book, that when she was pregnant, she started realizing how the office, when she had to park, she had to walk so long to get to the main building. And she was like, why don't we have parking for pregnant women which is closer to the office space? And she asked, and it got done. So many women don't even ask. So we need to ask. So I think there are things that women can do, and then there are things that companies need to do, and there's an important role for families. And then there are friends and allies that we need to have, and men as allies is critical for success. What about some of the men in the room? Any comments? Yes, please.
May as well. Being one of the few men, I may as well say something. Look, what you said, everything you said makes perfect sense to me. I'm married, father of a daughter, and obviously I want my daughter to have the same opportunities that anybody else would have. But what I also value about this event is the fact that there are both women and men, and we're discussing things. I think there's got to be an understanding from both sides that we are all part of the solution. It can't be the women talking to the women, the men talking to the men, and us saying to each other in our own echo chambers that we will find a way. We need to work together and realize that we both need to change if we're going to find a path for success in terms of achieving gender parity.
Thank you. So on this note, I think I'd like to end this session. Thank you so much for being here. If you would like to support us, become part of Irtika, Elevate, please do get in touch. When women grow, families prosper, economies grow forward. Let us create a stronger and a better world for all of us. Thank you.